The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys, they let us think that we're big boys, they let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat about her. We're at the entrance. It's time for pickup. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and liftoff.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's good to have you along for the ride on this Thursday, March 9th, Friday, March 10th. if you're on the East Coast. We are live right here at Uncle Jimbo's Cabin, right here in the Great White North, as we are live 7 days a week. Let's welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on Revolution Radio. Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL is the man you heard in the intro, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot rucks us in and out of every single show. He's the official sound of SOR. Hey, if you're a social media junkie like I am, do me a favor. Head on over to Twitter and give us a follow at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also tune us in on TuneIn, download our show from iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and of course our website is spacedoutradio.com. And if you go to patreon.com, we have some really cool offers for you there. Our listeners, like Rhonda, like Deborah, like Jeff, they've all become patrons of ours. So make sure you check those out at patreon.com. If you want to take part in this show, we don't take callers. You'll have to sign in to one of our chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, and on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, just go to hashtag SpacedOutRadio. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well. If you head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR space traveler. If you haven't yet, guess what? It's time. We offer some decent swag, as it's our opportunity to give back to you. We have a brand new news section called The Encounter that deals with everything paranormal, courtesy of our editors Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. You can check out my latest blog there as well. And researcher Mike Schmidt is waiting for you to fill out an SOR Sightlines report if you've had an experience you just can't explain. We are live right now on WQEE 99 Rock the Key, way down in Noonan, Georgia. Thank you so much for sharing your nights with us. We're live in New Orleans on 107.7 FM, the United Public Radio Network, also heard in over 160 countries around the world. We're live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio and on Revolution Radio. The Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Tonight, we take a look at the conspiratorial side of what goes on in the alternative media. Whether it's 9/11, Sandy Hook, the Boston bombings, Paris, or other terrorist attacks, there's always people wondering if there's a false flag behind the incident. So the question then becomes, how do we know what's real and what's not? The public, for the most part, takes what they see on the news and what they hear from their government officials as verbatim. We, as a society, are trained and expected to take that information as truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God. But does anyone really know where those weapons of mass destruction were in Iraq? Does anyone recall who created ISIS? Hello, John McCain. So, in comes Fred Burks. Before resigning from the U.S. State Department in 2004 due to excessive security demands, Fred Burks served many years as a language interpreter for presidents and other dignitaries. He interpreted for George Bush Jr., Bill Clinton, Al Gore, Dick Cheney, and many other top officials of the U.S. before becoming a whistleblower himself. We welcome in Fred Burks to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. He's going to be with us for the first 2 hours. In hour number 3, Forest Moon Paranormal's Eric Cooper is going to join me. Fred, welcome to Spaced Out Radio. How are you?
Hey, Dave. Great to be here. Welcome to you and all of our listeners, and I'm doing really well.
We're glad to have you, because one of the things that we make sure that all our listeners do before we talk conspiracy is we all got tinfoil hats on right now, so none of us can be affected here, my friend. None of us. We're safe.
Yay.
Hey, question for you, Fred, since we're going to ask you a few questions throughout the night.
Sure.
When you started your career in the government, working at the White House, did you ever see a day when you looked into the crystal ball to see your future that you would one day be considered a whistleblower?
Absolutely not. In fact, when I started this, I was a debunker. You know, I had friends who I considered conspiracy theorists, including my own housemate. And, he would tell me all these things, and I'd say, you got to be nuts. And especially when I was interpreting in the White House, and I just didn't see it. I basically quietly would laugh and say, these guys are nuts. So I definitely came from a non-conspiratorial background.
So before you got involved with all of this now, and you were still having the bright lights in your eyes and everything going great in your life, you've probably got some sort of dream job as a proud American working at the White House. Was it everything that you thought it would be, or when did things start turning for you?
Well, I have to tell you, being an interpreter is a really fun job. I got to, fly all around the country, meeting really cool people, and a lot of the people, I was in this program called the International Visitor Program first, which was eventually run out of the State Department, and it was for up-and-coming influential people, and I got to take them on study tours of the U.S. that were just fascinating. So it was really my dream job. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And then what happened was, and I saw a few things that only later I was able to put into context, but at the time it was like, that was just strange, but not so far out that it got me questioning things. And actually a very good friend of mine who I really trusted said, "Hey, Fred, I just watched this video, and it totally changed my life, and I think you should watch it." And I said, "Well, send it to me." And he was on the East Coast, and I live out in the San Francisco area, so he mailed it to me. And I put in this video. This was back in 2001. I believe it was July of 2001, it was 6 weeks before 9/11. And it was Dr. Stephen Greer doing his Disclosure Project talk at the National Press Club. And I watched one after another high-level government and military witnesses testifying to their personal involvement in this huge UFO cover-up, which I had never heard about. And literally, by the end of the 2 hours, my jaw was on the floor in disbelief. And I said, "Oh, my God." And my whole reality just shifted in that moment. And then basically, I started questioning, okay, well, if this is being covered up, I want to find out more, and what else is going on. So that was my life-changing moment in 2001, when I'd already been working with the State Department since 86. So that was 15 years.
That's amazing. And during that 15 years, Fred, did you ever hear of anything like false flags? Did you ever hear of people talking about aliens or UFOs, or whether or not 9/11 was an inside job?
Not in my professional capacity as an interpreter. I don't recall it ever coming up. Paranormal stuff came up once in a very interesting way, but it was not UFO-related stuff.
Oh, you got to share with our audience the paranormal story then.
Yeah, the paranormal was really interesting. Now, you got to understand that I did believe in paranormal stuff because I just know that this world is a wild and fascinating place, and almost anything is possible. But basically, I was interpreting for a guy by the name of General Charles Krulak, who was the chief of the Marine Corps in 1997, and he was meeting with the top general of the Marine Corps in Indonesia, whose name was Suharto, and it's the same name as the name of who's president, but they just happen to have the same name. Anyway, there was a big banquet one evening in his residence where I think he had 4 or 5, top-level 3, 4-star generals there, and Suharto had his wife and his retinue there. And one of I think it was a 3-star general, said, "I got to tell you what happened to me when I visited Indonesia." He said, "They showed me their psychic forces." And it's like, so, our ears prick up. What, psychic forces? And he said, yeah, they demonstrated for me their capabilities that they've developed in these troops, that they've trained to have incredible psychic abilities. He said, among the things they did, they had me take a coin, walk out into the middle of a soccer field, and bury the coin in a way that when I came back, I had no way that I could ever find it. And they had one of their psychic troops just walk right out to it, from like, I don't know, a couple dozen yards away, and just pick it up and bring it back. Then he said they actually had an obstacle course, and they put blindfolds. He said they had him put a blindfold on this guy to make sure it was really secure, and he did this obstacle course on a motorcycle blindfolded. And that's how good their psychic forces were. Now, really interesting, so that was one of the generals. Krulak poo-pooed the whole thing. He said, "No, that's basically," he didn't use the word bullshit, but he says, "No, there's no way that could be true." And my conclusion, even at the time, was, wow, I wonder if he's doing that to kind of distract attention because he doesn't want people to believe in this, rather than actually not believing it himself. So that was a fascinating little revelation there.
No kidding. That almost goes back to the whole MK Ultra days.
Yes. Well, yes, as you probably know, and many of your listeners know, that we also have psychic soldiers and a whole psychic program, which MK Ultra definitely has overlap with. But there are also separate psychic soldiers. Now, I have not run into that in my professional experience, but I have run into it with other whistleblowers who've talked to me personally about their experiences.
So how do you like being called a whistleblower?
Oh, I'm one I have a little bit of this rebel against authority thing, even though I was working with high-level people. So, I'm very thankful that my father, for all I had problems with him as a child, was always one who had to question authority. And so of course, I questioned him, and I tend to question authority. So it's not that I didn't believe that conspiracies exist. Of course, we all know there are conspiracies. It's just a matter of the level. I just didn't buy into the whole thing that, there's this relatively small group of people running the whole planet that would plot things like 9/11 and all of that.
So after the Stephen Greer video that you saw that seemed to change your life in regards to how everything was unfolding, was there ever a time when all of a sudden you started looking into all these tinfoil hat conspiracies and then started having them confirmed? How did that happen?
Well, absolutely. So, I need to say first that before I had watched that video, I had seen enough evidence that convinced me that there must have been ancient aliens. It was chariots of the gods and all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, it seems like there must have been some visitation, but I'd never heard anything solid about present-day stuff. So I did have some openness to it. But basically, I saw these, literally the type of people that I used to work with, top generals, top people in government talking about this stuff. So I got Greer's book and read the witness testimony of like 60, I think he has 64 books in his book, 64 witnesses in his book, Disclosure. An absolutely fascinating story. So I got very into it. And then it just happened. So that was July of 2001. The following April in 2002, he was out at an expo in San Francisco. So I went to hear him talk. And I got even more excited because he was talking about all this new energy stuff. And basically, I went up and said hi to him. I actually, because I had a friend who had some new energy stuff, and told him about that. And then we ended up getting in contact. And at the time, he was looking for a new personal assistant. And basically, I had all the qualifications, so I applied, and I actually flew back to interview with him in Virginia at his office there. And long story short, I decided it was not in my best interest to work as his assistant, but it was great to get to know him. And he's the one who said, okay, if you want to know what's really going on in the world, you need to go look at Mike Rupert's from the Wilderness website. You need to read the book Into the Buzzsaw by Christina Borges. And he gave me these resources. And when I started checking into those, it's like, oh, my God, this thing is way bigger than just the UFOs. So basically, I have to credit Stephen Greer, who has his faults, as many of your people will know, but he's a great guy also. He really opened my eyes and got me solidly onto the track of finding out what's really going on in this world.
We have heard a number of whistleblowers on this show. Some of them have feared for their safety, others have not. What do you think keeps you safe, number one? And number two, have you ever feared for your own life?
Well, that's a great question, Dave, because personal friends of mine have been targeted in severe ways where they've been incapacitated. Friends of friends have actually been killed. But interestingly, I don't fear for my life. I've always had a connection with what I call spirit or the divine or God, whatever you want to call it. And I have a deep trust that if I just open and follow my own inner guidance and spiritual guidance, that I will be protected. And if anything happens to me, that was all meant to happen. So I really don't have much fear. But doing the level of work I have, you would think, there would be problems, particularly since I was a whistleblower. I was on on front pages of newspapers for exposing what was going on with lies around Indonesia. And in fact, it was severe enough. I testified in a sort of an internationally watched trial in Indonesia, and one of the top people in their parliament offered me asylum. He said, this could be really dangerous for you. So people were concerned, and I thought, I don't know what's going to happen. I was amazed that even after this testimony, which, as I say, made the international news, I didn't get any flack. I got 2 interpreting friends who said, I thought that was unethical of you to reveal that stuff, that we really shouldn't do that as interpreters, which basically I have been bothered very little. Like I say, some of my friends who do less than I do have been bothered, and I credit that to my own belief that I follow my spiritual guidance, and also that I never attack people personally. And this is, I think, a mistake a lot of people make. It's like a lot of people who are in the conspiracy realm, they'll really attack the character of people. And I focus on exposing behaviors that are damaging to all of us. And by focusing on the negative behaviors rather than trying to target individuals and saying, oh, they're such assholes or whatever, I think that is, just will tend to not get us upset. I've learned what really upsets the power elite is when you attack them personally or their family personally. And of course they don't want stuff exposed, but they're even more upset by that.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to ask you a quick question about your phone line. Every few seconds you seem to be cutting out.
Ah, okay.
So I don't know if you have us on I don't know if you have us on speaker or anything that.
No.
Okay.
I could try doing headphones and see if that helps. Oh, but you know what? I don't think I have any handy here.
Well, we'll just run
through. Do you want
through.
me to try to move to another room?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great. Let's try and get a little bit, because, I mean, a lot of your information our listeners are going to want to hear. And, considering we all have our tinfoil hats on, we don't want to have to come up with the surmise that the government's coming to get us or anything like that, right?
I'm going to move closer to the router and see if that works.
All right, that would be that would be absolutely perfect. We were talking with Fred Burks tonight. His website that he works with is called wanttoknow.info. Lots of good stuff on this website. Now,
it's wanttoknow.info.
Now, Fred, you said you got a little bit of harassment from people that you worked with. Do you get the phone calls like Dr. James Fetzer does, or other people who've been on this show where literally they've had their phone cut out or their Skype just knock off? Last time we actually had Dr. Fetzer on, we started talking about the Boston bombing, and we lost him on Skype. His computer, which had been working just fine, all of a sudden just got shut right down for no reason.
Interesting.
We still had the Skype line going here. Everything was sounding great. And thankfully, earlier that day, he had given me his cell phone number, and we were able to get it. So there are people listening into this type of conversation.
Absolutely.
Do people like you get hit quite a bit by government officials?
Well, I'll tell you, so one of the things I have to share is that I'm a pretty deeply spiritual guy, and I really believe that when we all open our hearts and connect more, everything starts shifting in positive ways. So one of the things that you may consider rather bizarre that I do is I'll be talking to somebody about some sensitive stuff about, or whatever over the phone, and they'll say something like, oh, we're probably being listened to right now. And I say, yeah, let's stop a minute. Let's really open our hearts and send some love to whoever's listening to us and really wish the best, and that they might just open their hearts to whatever's the best thing to do in all of this. And we'll stop and sit in a moment and just sort of do that. And I think basically the people who are paid to listen in on these calls, it's very confusing for them. Let's just put it that way. And they don't know quite what to do with me. And so I actually have fun with that.
Awesome. Let's do that then. Hey, have you ever worked with Dr. James Fetzer? He's been on this show 2 or 3 times, and to me, when I see someone of his qualifications, I don't look at him as some sort of wignut conspiracy theorist who just wants to try and, make a name for himself. I mean, this guy has a background, yet he takes a lot of flack for the information that he tries to provide and put out there. What's your opinion of him?
Well, I have worked with him a bit on, the Scholars for 9/11 Truth website.
Yes.
I was involved with that, and so he and I had some interactions. And, he's definitely a courageous man who's done some awesome research, and he can be somebody who will really go into attack mode at times, and I can see where that causes problems for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in fact, that's one of the reasons I didn't really want to work too closely with him.
I don't blame you.
So, Greer was actually kind of like that too. I really admire and appreciate both of these men, and yet sometimes I feel like their personalities get in the way of their own work.
It's funny because a lot of times what we talk about on this show is whether it's conspiracies, whether it's things like Bigfoot, UFOs, or even the paranormal. It's amazing how in this field where really we're all going off of theory, but the amount of ego that is around this field that is really, in my opinion, extremely cancerous to any of us finding out the truth. What's your opinion of that?
Yeah, and as you probably know, that most of the people who have somewhat of a name are targeted, and they try to push them into that direction, because the more they get the ego to come out, the more they know it works against them. So when you're doing this kind of work, you're facing a lot of pressure, and so it's not surprising that the ego comes out. And I basically try my best not to fault people about that, and just be as gentle as I can in pointing out that maybe that doesn't serve, but also to really acknowledge, that some of the people doing great work, sometimes their ego gets in the way. Even David Wilcock, who he does great work, great research. And sometimes you feel like, wow, David, can you tone it down a little bit on the ego stuff?
So moving on here, what do you think then, because there's a lot of ego behind coming out with information, what do you think then of a company like WikiLeaks that brings in all of this information in a cadre of different topics?
Yes, well, Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, it's truly amazing to me how little their ego gets in the way. And it's not that they don't have egos, but the amount of pressure that they're facing, knowing that they could end up in jail like Chelsea Manning, and knowing that they could even be killed or whatever. And yet these two guys, both of them to me, seem like they're really trying to hold their line and doing their best to just put the information out there. So I have to say I'm really terribly impressed with both of them.
Do you think that they are dead men walking?
It all depends on how things go. I think right now, I'm quite tapped into sort of the network of conspiracy researchers. And I think most people are feeling like it's more unpredictable than it's ever been. So we just don't know, things could go really south and we could end up in martial law, or things that could be huge revelations that wake up the people and everything could shift. So if everything shifts in the direction where, we're starting to build a world that really works for everybody, no, they're certainly not dead men walking. If we go into a martial law state, I'd say, they're at high risk.
Eric in our chat room wants to know if you ever had the pleasure of working with General Franks during your time in the White House.
I have not.
Okay.
So just so you know, I was an Indonesian language interpreter, and so it was basically stuff that was involved with Indonesia, and I would get called to do high-level stuff a few times a year. It wasn't a whole lot, but it was enough that, by the way, if anybody does a search, you do Fred and interpreting stories on Google. I've written up all of the sort of interesting experiences, and even the paranormal experience I mentioned, and then some of the conspiracy-related stuff that actually happened after. A lot of it happened after I found out about it, some weird kind of conspiracy stuff. So it's all written up there if you just do a search on Fred interpreting stories.
Well, let's get into the whole false flag business here, because I'm going to tell you, I spent 10 years as a journalist. I was in the newsroom when 9/11 happened, know, albeit in Vancouver. I couldn't get any further away from New York City and Manhattan when that happened. But I remember, just like everybody else, watching it on TV. I remember talking to people. I remember, things like calling up the Vancouver Canucks director of scouting, Ron DeLorme, and asking him what he thought of the 2 L.A. Kings scouts who died on the first plane that hit the towers.
Wow.
And after a 10-minute interview, as I was about to hang up the phone, he says to me, "Dave, I didn't know they were on the plane."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so that has always stuck with me. And I guess the journalistic, skeptical side of me has always wondered, Fred, the minute something happens now, we have all of these people hopping online, false flag, false flag, false flag. Not everything is a false flag. There is still evil in this world. How are we able to tell as a public what is real and what is fake? Because there are events that I have questions on, but I don't think every single one of the events isn't caused by some terrorist wingnut.
Right, exactly. And that's a great question, Dave, especially as fake news has now become a meme. And what's real and what's not, it's a great question. And what I do is, first off, for me, and I've always done this, I open up to guidance and I say, Divine Spirit, help guide me so that I can be a truly good, discerning person to really understand and to not be arrogant and feel like I know what's going on when I really don't. And I also ask for independent corroboration, which I always get pretty much. If I get some piece of news that really like, wow, can that really be true? But it's pretty solid information, I need corroboration, and I'll get something from another independent source that verifies it. And that's when I know I'm on the right track. So it's, I think it's not an easy thing to try to figure out. And you have to, who can you trust? Like, there's a bunch of people out there, for instance, I'm sure you know about Benjamin Fulford, who, I know that he has deep inside contacts, but I know that he's being fed disinformation. A lot of people who have big names are being fed disinformation that they buy and then end up spreading. And so I think we have to always hold that skeptical part of ourselves to say we really don't know. Although I'm sure, something like 9/11 or the UFO cover-up, there's such preponderance of evidence that it's just undeniable. I would say, I'm 99.99% sure that this was a huge cover-up.
So if you're the public then, sitting at home, watching the news, and let's make up a story here, okay? So this one isn't real, so none of you tinfoilers go running with it. You know who you are listening, all right? Let's just say, hypothetically, Disneyland gets attacked.
Right.
Okay, and somebody runs in there with a bunch of vests or through the underground tunnels and starts lighting up people and starts shooting up right in the middle of Disneyland. How do we know whether or not that is a false flag? Because, let's face it, everybody's going to hop on that bandwagon. Oh, here's another one.
Yes. Well, I think basically we have to, I always wait. Because that, first off, if it is a false flag, they're going to put out a bunch of disinformation. So I try not to jump to conclusions, but I also try to learn, the basics here. And when it comes to mass shootings, I'm sure you know that MK Ultra programs people to become Manchurian candidates. And from all the research that I've done, I would say at least 90% of your mass shootings are people who are Manchurian candidates. And so that's one example, but I would have to say I tend to go, okay, well, this could be another one. But again, I'm not 100% sure. But with mass shootings, I tend to say, okay, this is probably something going on here. And, I've seen in almost all the mass shootings, there's all this information, I'm sure that that raises many questions. But for instance, if there's a big terrorist bombing or something like that, now, how much was that manipulated? Was it manipulated? And almost always there's some manipulation, but sometimes it's very sophisticated manipulations where, for instance, a lot of I'm sure you know that ISIS it was fed by these rogue elements in government. The rogue elements in government want us to be at war and want us because it feeds the war machine, but they're not actually specifically directing this person to go do that. They just put in the money and they have their spies that are maybe helping to direct it in that way. But I think I've found that a lot of people who fall into the conspiracy camp have a tendency to go a little bit too black and white and say, oh, this for sure is what's going on. I think it's much healthier to say, I'm fairly certain this is what's going on, and I'm open to new evidence at any time.
Now, I have to admit, there are some stories out there I don't fully understand. And I would like, before I make a concrete decision, I have an opinion, but that's me personally. So, for instance, when it involves crisis actors, we see what looks to be the same people showing up at event after event. Yeah. And, who hasn't seen the memes of the crying lady holding the cell phone? She's been seen at, or what we would perceive her to be at a bunch of different events. So that would tell me that maybe something is up. But on the flip side, everybody is said to have a doppelganger or two on this planet. How do we really know where and when these crisis actors are going to show up?
Well, Dave, I think you know the answer, and that is we can't know for 100% certain. You really can't. And, so like I've really looked into the crisis actor thing, and some of them do look almost identical, and you just can say, wow, if the chance of this happening by chance is very, very small. But I have seen things that in the beginning I was 99% convinced was real, and then found out later a very reliable explanation that no, it wasn't real. And so even when things look nearly 100%, I don't jump hard to that conclusion, but I say, wow, the evidence is really strongly pointing somewhere. And those are the people I tend to trust the most, the ones who are not making blanket statements like, oh, this was definitely the government, doing this. So I just feel, and I sense that you agree with this, it's just wise to have a skeptical part of ourselves about almost everything.
I never questioned 9/11 and the truth behind that.
9/11 is saying bigger events. When you have so much evidence, what I tell people is I'm 99.99% sure. Mm-hmm. But I won't say 100. I just, that's, to me, that's closed-minded.
What caused me to start wondering about 9/11 was Building 7. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the Pentagon. It wasn't anything like that. And it was Building 7 falling for no reason.
I've always said from the beginning that's what we need to focus on, and I'm so glad architects and engineers really focus on that.
Then I switch over to the Boston bombing. Yes. And the one piece of evidence, or two pieces of evidence there that really rocked me on that one was, number one, there's video of the brothers carrying silver-colored backpacks, and yet the backpack that blew up was black, and nowhere in the video are they seen wearing black backpacks. And number two, the soldier in the wheelchair, where that's very
convincing. The soldier in the wheelchair is, yes.
And for people who haven't seen that, there is a soldier being rushed by medics with literally his leg blown off to the bone. And there is no blood trail. There is, he doesn't look like...
There's spraying stuff on it, if you look at the video closely. Official video that looks weird. Did you see that one?
No, I have not.
There's somebody dumping a bag right around there that looks like it's trying to make it look like blood and stuff. And it was like one of these videos that was shown on one of the big websites, on one of the big major media news sites. Anyway, but yes, go on.
So that got me thinking. And then the terrorist attack on the gay nightclub, where they showed video of the people running victims. But if you look at a map on Google Earth, compared to the direction that they were running towards the nightclub, not away from it. Mm-hmm. Right. So these are some of the things that have made me question. I'm still not knowing what happened at Sandy Hook. Okay, I know Dr. Fetzer's take on that, and I know there's other strong information on that to and fro, but it involves children. I'm a father to some young children. I really don't really want to think about that because, I have a school 500 yards away from me. So in your opinion then, what are some of these verified examples of false flags that you believe were government operated?
Well, I want to invite you and your listeners, if you get some time, wanttoknow.info is the main website that covers all this stuff that I've managed for over 10 years now. If you do a search on false flags, we've got a great page that puts all of the major events. And what I always look for is let's collect all of the evidence that raises questions, but it has to come from solid sources. So you'll see on that webpage, we cover 9/11. We cover a whole bunch of major events through the history of the last century. And the links will take you to reports from ABC News or government reports that raise serious questions. And when you put all of the evidence together, it certainly looks like you've got a very good chance that this was a false flag. And yet still, we don't say that anything is certain. We just present all the evidence and then say, let's put it all in one place. I'm sure you're familiar with the Pizzagate thing. And the Pizzagate, at first it was sloppy. This almost always happens. Eventually they start compiling, and now there's a couple web pages you can go to that it's really solid, clear evidence that, wow, there's really something here. And so that's what I encourage people to do is let's not jump to conclusions, but let's put together solid, reliable evidence. And when it's less solid, let's acknowledge that, okay, this is from a less reliable source, but it's another piece that we need to consider and keep that separate from the really reliable sources. So this is what we do on wanttoknow.info. If you really explore around, wanttoknow.info covers all sorts of important cover-ups from banking, the pharmaceuticals, all sorts of stuff, and yet we use highly reliable sources that even skeptics can't deny.
Why do these? What is the purpose of a false flag event, in your opinion?
Well, of course, it's pretty simple. A false flag, it comes from the ships. Let's say two armadas are having a battle, and one of the best ways to really turn things around is you pretend that one of your ships belongs to the other side, and so you have this false flag, and that way you can pull off all sorts of manipulations, and you can make it look like that the bad guys are attacking us when it's actually we're attacking ourselves for a purpose. I'm sure even World War II that there's indications that they had knowledge that the Japanese were going to attack, but they allowed it to happen because they wanted Americans did not want to get pulled into another war. But after Pearl Harbor, of course, everyone wanted to get into the war because they killed all of our soldiers. So that being a false flag was they allowed information to just pass by so that they allowed Pearl Harbor to happen so that they could get us into the war.
And I understand that the government has to do something. There's no bigger money maker than the military-industrial complex. We see that now.
Just a quick comment on that. I believed that until a long time, until I really started checking more into the pedophilia thing. And these pedophilia rings, which reach the highest levels, and I have to say that is a huge moneymaker that most people don't give enough attention. So, yes, the military-industrial piece is huge, but so is pedophilia, and also drug running, all big money earners.
The drug running, I understand. I mean, what's the easiest way to get black op money? I can totally say that. And one of my listeners on Twitter, Canadian Joe at #SpacedOutRadio, he just popped up. Some would say the Gulf of Tonkin incident was a false flag that put the U.S. into Vietnam, which was a good way to get the drugs from over there into the United States, which the CIA was using cadavers to do so. That's been proven.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So when you look at these false flags and using drugs in order to cover up maybe billions or trillions of dollars worth of spending that is going in, it makes sense. The pedophilia ring, I don't understand that. What is the purpose of taking advantage of children?
I don't know how much you know about the dark net, but many, many billions of dollars flow through the dark net, and there's estimates of around 80% of that money is involved with child porn and snuff films and all this kind of stuff, that people pay big money to watch real live films of children being abused and people being killed right there in videos. It's huge amounts of money. It's all kept very, very dark. And it's, I think it's the biggest cover-up on the planet, even bigger than the UFO cover-up.
What's the purpose of that?
Well, it's to feed into people's base desires, these people who are really twisted, who are involved in satanic and Luciferian cults, and and to bring in huge amounts of money.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a very sick thing to talk about, but I'll tell you, it's my biggest passion is to expose what these satanic groups are doing, because people don't realize how much influence they have over these rogue elements of government. A lot of them are directly involved in that stuff, or indirectly. And if pedophilia, I mean, the Pizzagate is directly involved with that stuff. And if this starts getting exposed, it's going to be huge. But most people don't even want to look at it because it's so disgusting and so disturbing.
And I can understand that. Okay, the UN just recently also ripped the Vatican a new one for still hiding priests on their pedophilia charges. I mean, we understand that it's going on. We understand that, there's a lot of things that are happening that we don't want to deal with as a society. But let me ask you this, on the flip side, when we have people out there in the alternative media who are very pro-fear-mongering,
yes,
okay, and I can think of a couple of names, Alex Jones probably being the ringleader on that.
Mm-hmm.
I look at everything and I think, no wonder the mainstream doesn't A, talk about these topics, or B, even want to hear them. Because everything being a false flag now, Fred, there is no... We don't know what to believe, so we just say, screw it, leave the nutballs to themselves. I'm going to stick with my CNN or my CBC or my BBC or whatever it is, because that's what I know and that's what I have learned to trust.
Well, yeah, this is, I'll tell you, I have, of course, I have a network of friends that are research this stuff, but my own personal friends, maybe only 10% of them are aware of all this stuff. And most of my friends, they're already overwhelmed enough with their lives that for them to step in, look into, they know I do this stuff, but they don't ask questions because it's too scary for them. They don't want their reality upset too much. And I realized, it's not important that I get them to understand what's going on. It's important that I reach the people who can do something about it. And so this is where me and my friends who work on this stuff, we're really focused on how do we reach the people that if they knew this stuff, they could pull some strings to make something happen. And I think this is where we have to be really sort of tactical. It's not about getting the whole public to realize, because believe me, nobody's going to want to talk about pedophilia. Try talking about pedophilia with your friends, and unless they're really a deep tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist who's comfortable talking about that stuff, most people can't handle it. And I understand that.
So how do you deal with it then? How do you get that message out, Fred, knowing that there are so many people who are ready to criticize before they've even read into it?
So if you go look at the mind control section on wanttoknow.info, you'll see all the information that we've compiled there. And basically what I do is I make it so if our website, wanttoknow.info, is really kind of like a news site where everything is documented, and when we say something that's speculative, we'll say, this is speculation based on this and this. But here, this is actually reported in government documents, a university study, or whatever. We'll give you the sources. You can actually link to it and go check it. So when people read the government documents literally on how Manchurian candidates were created, how people are trained to be sex slaves and an alter personality, how that is used to manipulate global politics, it's all there in these declassified government documents that anybody can order. Then, this starts drawing attention to people who know about some of this stuff. So what I know, and people have contacted me, is people in high places eventually find this stuff because the people who care pass it on to the right people. And then, they start saying, okay, so what can we do about this? And as you know, it's not easy to, this is a huge juggernaut. And to change the direction of a juggernaut, it takes a lot of people with focused energy. But the thankful thing is because things are so unpredictable right now, I think there is a much better chance of us turning this whole ship around. And that, to me, is exciting.
And I see where it's exciting. Okay, because it's going to be shows like this, it's going to be work that you do that brings everything to the forefront. If people start taking it, exactly. Yeah. If people start taking it seriously, but Mike B here on Twitter at #SpaceOutRadio is saying, these topics can be disturbing. But where is the actual evidence? We have a lot of people coming out saying, I saw this happen, I saw that happen, take my word for it. But how can the public trust that person? Because we don't know if it's somebody who's just upset that they didn't get a promotion and Fred the butt kisser did, or something along those lines. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Absolutely. No, and this is why I said don't trust me and I don't trust anybody. Listen to what they say and say, show me the evidence. And that's what I always do, because believe me, I have tons of people send me information, and I'll tell you, 70% of the time, within 2 minutes, if it's something new, I can show that it's bunk. Because I've gotten really good at research, and I can just go online and find out whether this is true or not. And pretty soon, like, oh, no, here's the explanation. But then there's another, 15% that I feel like, okay, wow, this has actually been reported in a key, reliable source. And here's another place here, and I can put them together. So don't trust me. Don't trust the people saying, believe me. Look at the evidence. And if you go to wanttoknow.info, you'll see we give you the links to, I have the front page here in front of me. Here's BBC News explodes plans of the U.S. military to provide maximum control of the Internet, as detailed in a classified secret Pentagon document signed by the U.S. Secretary of Defense. That's a BBC News report. So even though conspiracy theorists don't trust BBC, most people do, and the fact that they would report something like this, that makes it kind of reliable. We also have government documents, and again, you can order and find these documents online on government websites released through the Freedom of Information Act that show that top Pentagon generals once approved plans to foment terrorism and kill innocent civilians in major U.S. cities through Operation Northwoods. So we've got the government documents, and you can find it on a government website, and that's pretty much as strong as you can get. So if you look at that kind of evidence, it's pretty hard to deny.
I understand that. A lot of people don't want to do that digging, though. They expect the media to provide it for them. But if the media is now bought off, and I'm saying this as someone who worked in the mainstream media, okay, if the media, especially in the United States, is now bought off, how are they able to get the true news? Because I'll tell you, over the last 20 years, since the O.J. Simpson Bronco chase, we've seen a lot of non-news become front page.
Well, Dave, this is where you and me and our colleagues come in, because people are now no longer trusting the media, and I totally support that, but they are looking to people like you and me who are doing our best to get the reliable information out there. And basically the alternative media is the one that people are looking to. So you find out which websites do you trust. I can tell you the websites that I trust and the ones that I don't. And I agree, Alex Jones, though he has some good stuff occasionally, I do not trust him because he's just way too much into the fear-mongering for me. David Icke also is another one who goes into fear-mongering too much, so I'll occasionally listen to what he has to say, but I don't trust him. And yet there are people like John Rappaport I totally trust. Catherine Austin Fitz is one of the best sources out there. She totally knows what's going on. So if you find the people that you can trust that give you the evidence, then you don't have to spend as much time, because I trust that these people and myself are spending, I put in 40 hours a week doing nothing but finding out what's real and what's not and putting it together in a way that people can digest it.
We only got about 2.5 minutes before we have to go to break. Is the media, in your opinion, then, in on these conspiracies?
Well, no, I think it's a blanket statement, like, is the government behind all this stuff? No, it's not the government. It's not the media. It's rogue elements. As we know, the CIA and secret programs infiltrate the media, and they infiltrate the government, and these rogue elements are the ones who are behind it. And they're very careful. For instance, in the media, you want to get, there's a key position where the person decides what's going to get reported and what doesn't. And what you find is that in most media, that's a covert CIA position. They make sure that they get that person who decides, if it's anything to do with, like, for instance, a 9/11 cover-up, well, no, we're not going to report that. Or Pizzagate, we'll make sure that it's proved to be wrong or something like that. Mm-hmm. So you have to be really careful when you get into the mindset of the government is evil. No, it's not the government that's evil. It's certain individuals within the government that are on all of this stuff. I know there's a lot of really great, courageous journalists out there. In fact, we have a great page where 20 leading journalists, including winners of several Emmys and a Pulitzer, have described being prevented by their corporate media ownership from reporting riveting stories on major cover-ups. And so there's a lot of really good journalists out there and a lot of good people in government. I met many of those when I was working as an interpreter. So be careful not to just, make blanket black and white statements on all this stuff.
I understand that. And, I guess when I look back at my journalism side, when I graduated in 1998, I remember my first day in college in 1996. Our main instructor said, your job is to always remain down the middle. Sometimes journalists have gone to jail for things like that. So we don't see that anymore. We see journalists who are, deflective, giving opinion as fact. And I've never seen that before. And to me,
this is what I don't trust. Yeah, anybody who's doing that, I don't care where they're from. If they're making blanket statements, I don't trust them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm going to get you to hold on.
I invite all of your listeners to really be aware when people start making blanket statements that, so-and-so did so-and-so without any sort of qualifiers. Be careful about trusting that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My friend, I'm going to get you to hold on. That was a quick first hour. Fred Burks is our guest. He is a whistleblower. He used to work at the White House as a translator. His website that he works for, wanttoknow.info. I highly suggest you check it out. We will be back with Fred for one more hour right after this.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
The third Monday of every month, Spaced Out Radio is going to bring you a different look at everything paranormal. Welcome to The Reporters. Jim Mallard, Vanessa Hogel, Denise Garcia, and Christina George join me, Dave Scott, for a look at the weird and strange from the other side of the microphone. We'll break down ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, and the people investigating them. The paranormal media has never been heard like this. Come listen to The Reporters.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Hey, this is Canadian paranormal investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Tomorrow night on the show, we round out the week talking some ghostly encounters. All the way from Detroit, Michigan, Todd Bonner and his crew will join us 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia. Thank you so much for being with us on this, well, I guess looking at the clock now, Friday morning for you. We're also live in New Orleans on 107.7 FM, the United Public Radio Network, and over 160 countries around the world on Renegade Talk Radio. We are live in Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Apocryphal. Apocryphal. is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, space travelers, because that's a good word score in Scrabble. Apocryphal is your password for the night. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. You can also follow us at SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can tune us in on TuneIn, download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on Stitcher, TalkStream Live, RadioGuide.fm, and our website is SpacedOutRadio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can also head on over to Patreon.com and become one of Spaced Out Radio's patrons, because we have some cool swag to give away there as well. Tonight we are talking false flags, conspiracy theories. Get your tinfoil hats back on. Fred Burks is joining us. His website that he works for is called wanttoknow.info. Fred, welcome back.
Great to be back, Dave.
We were talking about the media right beforehand, and I get a little passionate about that. I'm not going to lie. I do get a little passionate about that, because the last thing that I want to see is a career that I love go down the tubes into this type of shenanigans that we see out of some media outlets, and that's been proven. But when it comes to the government side of things, are all governments doing this, Fred? Or is it just maybe the big four, which would, in my opinion, the big four would be the United States, Russia, China, and Great Britain?
Well, you know, it's complex here. Basically, from my research, you find that there is a group, I call them the power elite, and this power elite is not unified, that there are various factions. Understand there's sort of the Rothschild faction, there's the Russian faction, there's the Rockefeller faction, and these factions sometimes work together, but particularly since 9/11, they've been much more fractured, and that's a good thing. The more that these factions are kind of fighting against each other, the more it tends to be exposed to the public. And I think 9/11 basically failed in achieving their desire of sort of martial law, let's control the whole planet, and woke up enough people that now it's forced them to become more fractured. Enough people in the power elite are really questioning. And yes, these power elite, as I'm sure you know, they work through secret societies like the Bilderbergs, like the CFR, and through their buddy-buddy network, they get their people into top positions, not just in these four big countries, but even around the world, so that there is the various factions have their plans that they're trying to roll out. And so the different factions might have different plans, and so sometimes they end up bumping into each other and causing problems. And for instance, I think the certain factions wanted Hillary Clinton to be president. And it was kind of a lesser-known faction, I think, that got Trump into there, maybe the Russian faction even. So to say that, all governments are controlled is, I think, quite an exaggeration, but there is a control process that affects huge amounts of governments and decisions that are made.
So when you look at all of these different groups, are they the ones who are controlling the world? Are they the ones who are making all these decisions behind government officials and considering, say, a country like Canada or Australia or Bolivia or these smaller to mid-sized countries really have no say in what's going on? Or are they a part of it too?
Well, I think everyone is doing their best to have an influence. And particularly people who move into high levels of government, you kind of have to have somewhat of a big ego to push to the level that it takes to become a leader in government. And so you're looking at who can you align yourself with to move up the rank, to move up the ladder. And then, you go to the higher levels, we talk about the power elite on the planet, and I know that most of your listeners are aware that there's the off-planet influence, and that there may even be ET species that are competing with each other and somehow trying to influence the Earth. Or, in my understanding, the higher level you go to ETs, extra-dimensionals, that they're actually, some of them, trying to help us, which I think is very important. So it's a complex situation, and I think you have to be careful about trying to make it too easy. And this is what makes it hard for people, because our minds want to put things into boxes that we can understand and work with. And a lot of times it's more complex than we might like it to be. But if we can accept that and work with it, then we can, have a flexible, I call it fluid intelligence, that's open to learning and shifting, but also still developing a more and more solid picture of what's going on.
Not to get all environmental here, but do these groups understand what they are doing to the planet? Do they understand the dangers that are being caused, that we see scientists coming out about global warming, about, the usage of fossil fuels? I think of the automobile industry, where we see people who have created engines that are running off of water or electricity, and the patents just seem to be running, dry. GM, for instance, a number of years ago, had an electric car that used zero gas. And and they got their hand slapped with that in the 80s. And that car just seemed to disappear, and the people who were working that project all were terminated. So when I look at it, I'm wondering, how much pull do these people have in actually giving a care about this planet?
Well, here we get back to the factions of the elite, and there's one faction that I call the Armageddonists. And these people truly believe the Earth has to have a third world war that wipes out 90% of the people in order to create the world that they then want to have. And so the Armageddonists don't care about the environment because they believe we need this war, and it's going to destroy the environment, so it doesn't matter anyway. You may remember Reagan's, Secretary of the Interior or the head of the EPA made a comment that they caught where he said, it doesn't matter anyway, we're going to have Armageddon. But there are other factions, of which I think Obama was a part, and some other people that do care more about the environment. And so competing factions have different agendas here.
I just don't get it. I really don't get it. I mean, in the end, if you have Armageddon or you have some sort of nuclear holocaust, and we're still trying to figure out what's happened at Fukushima and the dangers of that.
Yes.
I mean, sure, you can wipe out 90% of the people on this planet, but is there going to be any planet for food? Like, do they think about who's going to grow the food? Who's going to, make sure the water is clean? You still need people to do that.
Right. This is a pure speculation, Dave, and I want to really, it's just pure speculation, but I suspect that there are, let's say, somewhat nefarious ET groups that have managed to convince some of the people on planet here that this Armageddon scenario is actually going to work, and I think it's BS. It's not really the case. But they're able to come up with things that do convince people of this, even though I agree with you that it's ridiculous to think that we can survive a nuclear war and the planet still be a reasonable place to live.
I have a question from Eric in the SOR Space Travelers Club, and Gail as well. They are wondering, because they've never really heard the topic of darknet that you used in hour number 1. I'm wondering if you could give an explanation of what that is.
Oh my goodness, I highly recommend that they just do a quick search on darknet. It's one word. And basically, it's a whole part of the internet that is run on the Tor system, Tor, that allows for anonymity in a way that is not possible otherwise. So once you're in the darknet, it's almost impossible for intelligence agencies and anybody to find out who you are. And so this is where a lot of drug dealing, a lot of pedophilia, and a lot of deep illegal activities take place. It's not just used for negative things. Of course, it's used for super secure communications and stuff like that. But it's an important thing. If people don't know what the darknet is, do a little bit of research. Just do a search on darknet, because there are major media articles on it that help. I'm sure Wikipedia has a nice piece on it. It's a really important piece to understand.
Gail is asking a follow-up question. Why are the Rothschilds and Rockefellers always blamed for things? Besides being wealthy, what have they done? What did they do?
Well, basically, I think that, as we mentioned, there's factions of the elite, and certain families become more prominent in each of these factions. And so, basically, the Rockefeller family was able to get control of huge amounts of money. And when you have that kind of money, of course, if you study who Rockefeller was and even his family, they were quite, I can't think of a better word right now than selfish. We're self-oriented. And of course, they had to look good to the public. So yes, they set up all these foundations to make sure that they looked good. But if you look at their actions, they were pretty self-centered. And so they wanted to get as much control for them and their family as possible. They were the ones behind the Fed. There's solid evidence to support all this. Is the setting up of the Federal Reserve, which is one of the things that created this huge amounts of debt. And so, yeah, I think it is wise to not always blame it on the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, but they do kind of represent the families that are seen as in control of certain factions of the elite.
Do you think they have that much pull? I mean, do they not play a huge part in the World Monetary Fund?
Well, you know, so here you've got a whole bunch of people. We know that there's been certain members of both the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers who've broken out and said this is all crazy and tried to expose a lot of what's going on. So again, you can't say that all the Rockefellers and all the Rothschilds, and the original people are dead now, so these are their descendants we're dealing with. And sometimes brother and sister in their own families don't agree with what they're doing. But yes, there are certain people that have inordinate amounts of money and power in those families that are doing their best to manipulate things, but by no means are they the controlling forces of these factions. They're maybe like the major stockholder, but there's a whole bunch of other stockholders who have a lot of power and influence too.
Getting back to the media play on this and what happened in Japan with Fukushima in 2011, and we're starting to see that. And being on the West Coast, I know, if I go back to the old rivers that I fished every fall when the salmon are running, that there was actually radiated pieces coming up on shore where I used to fish or hang out with my kids. So is there a cover-up?
It was radioactive. I'm just curious.
There was a big piece of metal that was found by one of the heritage sites that tested positive for nuclear radioactivity.
Uh-huh.
And I know there's been other pieces that have washed ashore, from Alaska all the way down to California because, well, let's face it, the ocean takes things east. Mm-hmm. And, the point that I'm trying to make here is we have a lot of reports coming out of Japan and all over that the radiation isn't that bad, to reports that you shouldn't eat any more shellfish or seafood out of the West Coast. This is a good example of not only media but science when we don't even know what we can do or what we should be eating out of one ocean.
Yes. Yeah, and that's one of those things where, I have no doubt that some degree of radiation has reached here. I knew from the beginning that the alarmists were sort of saying, oh, now the whole world, we're all going to be poisoned, and that was excessive because as we see, obviously the death rates have not shot up on the West Coast. I live on the West Coast. But is there some danger to eating these fish? I honestly don't know how dangerous it is. My own belief is that if you take really good care of your body and you have a strong immune system, it can handle all sorts of stuff. And so I have chosen not to worry about it too much. Am I crazy to do that? I don't know. I'm not seeing people dropping like flies around me, but it could be like tobacco where it's insidious and builds up over decades. So I honestly don't know about this. And as you say, it's really hard. You can do the research, but people are biased and their bias is going to show up. So I think we each have to make our own decision.
So let me ask you this. In the way the media is with social media, disinformation, real information, government cover-ups, where the hell is the right story? Where's the truth anymore?
Well, again, I think you have to find who is it that you trust. And I think this is what you're doing, Dave, in your stories. You're trying to find the people that you more or less feel like have something worthwhile to say that's going to not be too fake or filled with misinformation, and really look at who can you trust. And I would say the way to do that is look for the people who are not saying, I have the answer, I have all the truth, but are saying, I'm doing my best to research this, and I'm working with others, and here's what we're coming to believe. Those are the people that I really trust.
Mm-hmm. So let's put you on the spot. Which media outlets do you trust?
Well, as far as media outlets, I can't think of specific media. I can tell you certain individuals in media that I trust, but no outlet is totally clean. I like John Rappaport. As I said, he's covering a lot of stuff that's really good. Catherine Austin Fitz is somebody that I follow closely. Those are the two that I trust the most. I used to like David Wilcock, but he's just gotten out there with some of these crazy predictions, and they don't come true. So he's a good researcher, and I think he's a thorough researcher, but he's sloppy in how he presents his research. But there's a bunch of others that I think, what I specialize in, and I have people send me stuff from all over the world, is when the media reports something that's not in their own interests to report, for instance, about WikiLeaks or something like that, then it's worthwhile watching. So I actually look for government documents and occasionally university studies, but also particularly media stories that are revealing. For instance, I happen to have right in front of me here now, there's a BBC News did an article called Inside the Secretive Bilderberg Group. And so if the BBC News is reporting on the Bilderbergs and they're not trying to say that, there's some great organization, I think it's worth looking at. It says right in the BBC article, one group, the Bilderberg, has often attracted speculation that it forms a shadowy global government. And so if you can find information that's coming out that isn't in the service of the global elite, but it's coming out through the major media, that's worth paying attention to. And you'll see on wanttoknow.info, we have, if people go to the website there on the top, there's a black band with all sorts of topics like mind control, energy, elections, media, health, banking. But one of them is news. And under that, there's all these, we divide it by topic, but summaries of news articles that are incredibly revealing, for instance, about 9/11 or about assassinations or even about secret societies. And you'll see all the articles that we've compiled, and we literally now have over 8,000 articles in our database that we've summarized that show that things are not what you think they are, but we believe this information is reliable because it's not in their interest to report it. I would say not in the interest of the global elite to report it.
Right.
But of course, a good reporter who is not tainted would report it.
You obviously have sources that are probably, maybe some are still deep on the inside, that give you information. And
yes.
I think what drives the public nuts is that these sources are only known as sources. They don't understand, and I'll defend that by saying this, they don't understand the purpose of the source.
Yes.
And they want names. Everybody says, give me names, I need names in order to have proof. Well, you can't get names because then that information well dries up. When you look at your sources, I'm assuming, and maybe you can confirm this, that you have sources that are still in government, you have sources in the military, you have other sources because of what you do now that come and give you information. So how do you, as a researcher who wants to be credible, how do you confirm what those sources are trying to tell you?
Well, see, here's what I do. So you'll find out I almost never say that I have a source who is claiming such and such. I don't do that. But what I do is I use my sources to help inform me of what's really going on. I've have sources tell you stuff that's so far out there you almost never believe it, but I've come to believe because I've heard from enough different sources that it's true. But I won't report on it unless I can find something to really solidify it. So every once in a while I'll find a media article or something that'll touch on a really important topic, and I might make a note, say that we have an inside source who confirms this and believes such and such. But again, not making a statement like this is what's really going on, but saying this. But even then, I do that very rarely, but I use the sources to inform myself on where I should focus my attention. And for instance, if I get something that seems like I really don't know what's going on here, I'll send it to a couple of my sources and say, what do you think about this? And if, for instance, if it's about mind control, I have 3 great sources. I'll send to all 3 of them. If they're all in agreement, then I'll really listen to that. And sometimes I'll get back differing opinions from these different sources. And so I take that on, like, listen, okay, so we don't know what's really going on here. So sources are incredibly valuable, but that's not what we use on wannaknow.info. And I think, the use of by the media of some of these sources is unfortunately very poor because they're being led, and you probably know this, Dave, that if you have, for instance, let's say you have a source, the number 2 person in the CIA, he feeds you information. If you report it and say it's from an unidentified source, he could be feeding you disinformation. And you're going to report it anyway, because if you don't report it, he's going to be upset and you want to keep that source. So therefore you end up reporting tainted news, but sometimes it's real news. And so it becomes a real mess when major media reporters depend too much on certain sources.
Well, that's why you have to be able to trust, right? But there are government people out there, and I'm sure you have talked to them, maybe either on phone or in person, that say, look, I am just as disgusted as the public that all of this is going on.
Absolutely.
But you got to keep me silent. I still need my pension. I still need my job. I still need to feed my family. How often is that happening? How many people are actually whistleblowing without going public?
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's probably less than most of your listeners might think. I can tell you of my really good, solid sources, I only have about 5, that don't want to be known. I have a number that I can actually give their name, rank, and serial number, and that's great. But that's a whole different category. So there are sources, but, as you know, we're being monitored all the time. And, the sources know that, so that phone calls are tapped. There are secure ways of communicating, but even those can be broken into. So these days, unfortunately, it's very hard for sources to want to come out and share what they have. And so it's pretty rare. What I do have more often is people sort of so disgusted that have either retired or are willing to lose their job, which more that are retired, say, okay, I'm willing to spill this stuff because it needs to come out now, and then I can use their name.
Well, I mean, not everybody is as brave because they've seen what's happened to Snowden. They've seen what's happened to Manning. Yeah. They've seen what's happened to other people who've come out or taken personal information and gone public. It isn't a fun time to be able to spill the beans, so to speak.
Absolutely. And some of my sources they'll tell me I can't talk about certain things, even to me. So they say, it's like, no, we can't go into that.
So when it comes to the false flag events that are happening, do your sources reveal to you, saying, off the record, of course, because, you can only go on the record so much. Do they reveal to you, hey, maybe look into the Boston bombing a little bit more. Maybe try this angle with 9/11. Maybe try this angle with what happened in Paris. Is that how it works for you?
Occasionally. That doesn't happen very often. The stuff that I hear is kind of really out there paranormal stuff that most people can't. Now, your listeners might be able to handle it, but most people can't handle it. And that paranormal stuff plays an important role in what's going on, too, as I'm sure you have some idea.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going with that. I know exactly where you're going with that. On my entire life changed on April 10th of 2014 when I came face to face in the middle of the afternoon with an extraterrestrial.
Wow, that must have been freaky.
Yeah. You just never prepare yourself for that. You just don't. I had I'm going to give the Coles Notes version here because my listeners probably don't want to hear too much about it. They hear it enough. But what happened was, a couple weeks previous to that, I had what I like to call my reawakening, where I was taken. I don't know if it was a dream or if it was reality. I was taken into a bright white room. I knew there was walls there, and I had this voice talking to me, basically saying, we don't want you researching anymore. We don't want you doing anything. And
wow.
Yes. And 3 weeks after that, I was at a friend's house, thought I was having a migraine, realized that it was shapes pulsating in my head. and then had an absolute anxiety attack in front of my wife and friends that I needed to go into their backyard because they lived in a remote area of town, and they had 10 acres and only 2 houses on their street, and the forest horseshoed the property, so it was quite secluded. I went outside and I said, okay, who's calling me out? And 150 yards away from me, there a UFO lit up like a Christmas tree.
Wow.
And then 5 days after that, I had my extraterrestrial encounter with a good friend of this show, Samantha Mowat, whom I had met I'd met her about 20 minutes earlier, and she was a lifelong ET contactee. And we walked back into that forest, and lo and behold, she says to me, hey, I don't want you to be afraid, but I want you to look that way, pointing north, and tell me what you see. And literally 200 feet away from me, there's a 10 to 12 foot extraterrestrial standing there.
Wow. And did you communicate with it?
I was too busy crapping my pants, not going to lie.
Okay.
You know,
understandable.
You got to realize at that point I'm 40 years old, and my entire life in front of me just changed at the blink of an eye.
No kidding.
In the meantime, there was a second being there that she was telepathically communicating with.
Wow.
And they invited us over. And
what was the message?
The message was, we are not here to harm you. We are here to say hello. You are more than welcome to come on over. However, we fear for the health of the man.
Interesting.
And they were absolutely concerned about what was happening with me. So obviously they had scanned me, realized that internally I was having an absolute panic attack.
Yes.
And I refused to go over. Now, God only knows that I pray every night for that experience to happen again, because I got to go over.
Right.
I got to go over.
So many people would love to have that experience, and yet when it happens, it's just too much.
Absolutely. So when it gets into the whole UFO side, because I'm an experiencer with something like that, it makes me wonder, what is going on there? Why no disclosure? What is the harm in disclosure? But since doing this show, I firmly believe that the majority of the public could not handle it. I do not believe that for a second that they are ready for that. Is that the reason why disclosure is not happening?
Yes, and because what would happen for most people is they would turn the ETs into gods, and they actually don't want to be gods.
I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah, because you think about it, this is the ancients. When the ETs did come down to the ancients, they were treated as gods. And what humanity has reached a place where we're ready to look that every one of us, in my understanding, is a divine being. Every one of us is an equally beautiful, radiant divine being. And yes, some are much more capable or skilled at various things, but we all come from that same divine source. And so these ET beings that are the benevolent ones, I'm really clear that they don't want to be positioned in a place where we're just going to bow down to them and say, tell us what to do. They want us to learn and grow. There's a body of material, I don't know if you've heard of it, called the Hidden Hand material. And you can look it up, Hidden Hand interview. Look it up on our website. We have a really good summary of it. If you just type, we have a search engine right at the top. And they go into the whole, what are the ETs doing here? And again, this is speculative stuff. I'm really not solid, but it makes so much sense, particularly based on what my inside sources have told me, that I really listen to this stuff.
Well, I try to as well. And when you're an experiencer, I mean, that's the reason why I started this show. I couldn't find the answers that I needed that would satisfy my journalistic mind. Now I do know that I have friends who say, oh, you're a nutball or whatever, but whatever. You're going to get that. You're going to get that criticism. So,
absolutely.
But here's one thing, and I want to ask you this question in regard to it, because this is totally unscientific. I have absolutely no proof of this whatsoever. This is just an opinion of mine of just something I've noticed, because one of the things I try to notice is patterns, and this is a pattern I've noticed. I have noticed that countries that are more export countries. Okay, countries that are creating things. I'm thinking Japan, China, the United States, Russia, Great Britain. Technologically advanced countries seem to have more malevolent type of extraterrestrial contact than countries that are import countries, much like Canada, France. You know, we see a lot of it happening in Brazil, where a lot of the extraterrestrial contact doesn't seem to be as dark and as scary. Have you recognized any type of pattern like that?
I have not. I've never heard that before, but it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't quite know what to say about that.
But here's the reasoning behind it. And this might be something to research for you. Not that I'm trying to, step on your toes or anything. But I have a theory behind it. It's because smaller countries like Canada, Brazil, etc., didn't make a deal humans for technology. Because we're not creators.
That makes some sense.
And when I see that happening, I strongly believe there is something to that. I passed that information on to a couple of Canadian researchers, and they'd never thought about it either. And I know they're looking into it as well. So do you think that these more advanced technological countries that are producing electronics and computer components at a staggering rate, do you think that there might be something to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it would make sense that you're basically, because some of these, the thing is about the ET situation is just like in the power elite, I said there's some people who are more benevolent and some who are much more self-centered. The same goes with the ETs. Not all ETs are benevolent, but neither are they all evil. So you got to look at which groups is working with which, and the technology transfers seem to have happened with some of the ones who are more interested in control or neutral at the least. So it would make some sense that those who are making deals with these, let's say, I don't like the word, but negative extraterrestrials, would be then having sort of more negative experiences among the experiencers. And of course, there's the whole question of how many of these UFOs are actually made by rogue elements of government. We know that there are these artificial reproduction vehicles that look like UFOs and can behave like UFOs that are actually made by earthly sources.
So
this is the whole matter.
Do you believe then that there is a secret space program?
I do, and I think that Corey Good, I can tell you, I know the woman who brought him into the limelight, and she knows him very well, and she says he, in the beginning, the stuff he was sharing, she believed was almost all real, at least to the best of his recollection. But she thinks he's being fed information in some way now that it's, a lot of it's really good stuff, and some of it's meant to lead people astray. So I think a lot of the stories out there about the secret space program are over-exaggerated and meant to lead us astray. So I advise caution. Not to say that it doesn't exist. I know that there is a secret space program, but that some of the information being put out there is being swallowed as if it's true when it may not necessarily be all true.
Do you think then that we have been to Mars? Do we have bases on the moon?
I don't have really solid evidence of it, but we have people who've gone on the record who are former or current government people who have said that, yes, we do. So I do tend to believe that is true, and I'm not 100% convinced. But there's even people like I think it's the great-granddaughter of Eisenhower, Laura Eisenhower, who's, runs a radio show also, you may know about her. Yes. Who says she was there, that she was taken there to the Mars bases. And do I believe her? I believe that she believes it, but I really don't know, because I know that it's possible to alter people's memories and to actually insert memories. And this is some of the more bizarre stuff. Mind control, to me, is the key. If you understand how sophisticated the mind control technology so that they can actually insert and erase people's memories, then you really start questioning what's real and what's not. And so it's really good to have a skeptical attitude, yet not be a disbeliever or a believer in a lot of this stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What about chemtrails then? You know, there's a lot of speculation between chemtrails. There's a lot of speculation whether or not it leads to this, what a lot of doctors call a mythical disease in Morgellons. What's your take on that?
I'll tell you that there are certain things that are used to divide the people who are doing serious research, like did a plane really go into the Pentagon? That, to me, is a less important matter when you look at the whole 9/11 picture, but it was used to divide the movement. And so you have your people who believe it was a missile, you have the people who believe a plane, and they fight against each other. And it doesn't serve anybody. And chemtrails is another one like that. There's definitely evidence that chemtrails are real, but it's used, again, to divide the conspiracy. There's like, oh, no, they're really not real, or they are real. Is there strong evidence? Yes, there is strong evidence. But to me, from the beginning, my rational mind says that if the power elite of this planet, why would they want to create chemtrails that are going to affect them and their family as well as all of us? It's not like certain areas aren't being targeted occasionally, or, you know. So it doesn't make sense to me that people would be using chemtrails to really damage themselves or damage the planet, unless they're Armageddonists. You know, so that is an argument. So we do have a page on chemtrails. You'll see some of the best evidence we have there if you want to do a search on it. But I do not buy into it the way a lot of people do. I believe there's definitely something there, but I don't know what's really going on.
So what do you think of the disease Morgellons then?
Well, that there's enough evidence that Morgellons is real. Now, what's going on there, it's really hard to know. I think it could be just some crazy, I tell you, there are crazy government programs, secret research programs, and I could tell you stories about that absolutely are just doing crazy stuff. Lyme disease, I'm convinced, was an accidental escape from the Plum Island Research Lab. And Morgellons, it was likely developed by some, secret program and released, but that's speculation based on just a lot of research and knowledge.
I'm still stung over the whole chemtrail thing, because when I lived near Vancouver, we never used to get chemtrails up until, a few years ago. And now that I've moved north, where literally the population of my town is maybe 1,800, we get get hit once a month.
Where it's so when you say get hit, how can you tell that it's really?
In my opinion, because I always have my eyes to the skies ever since a certain ET sighting, the regular chemtrails just don't disappear. They dissipate into a cloud, so you have a nice blue sky with this white cloud that is now covering it. Whereas we get a lot of, the airspace over my area now gets a lot you flights over, coming over from Asia, say going to Toronto or New York. And, you watch them fly over and their contrails disappear within, 30 seconds or so.
Yes, and that different cloud and different weather formations can cause contrails to hang around a lot more and spread out. So to me, I have friends that they look up and see chemtrails all the time, and I say, I don't know. And I know that sometimes they're exaggerating. So, and again, the question is, why would they be doing this, which is an important question. And again, I'm not poo-pooing it. If you look at our chemtrails page, there's solid evidence there's undeniable evidence through government documents and other reports that there are some real chemtrails. But I think if we're looking for chemtrails, we're going to see them. Because to some degree, we look through, every one of us has filters that we look through based on our beliefs. You can't help but have that. So if you have the filter that chemtrails are absolutely real, you're more likely to think, oh, that's a chemtrail, when maybe it really isn't. So it's one of those things. I don't like to go into the chemtrail question too much because there's so many things that are more reliable that we can talk about. Certainly, it would be important if they have that, and then we could go into speculation, but it's just speculation about what's really going on there.
Right.
So my preference is to focus on stuff that's more solid.
All right, let's get to Gail's question then in the SOR Space Travelers Club, and she is asking, Fred, are you saying those tragic events like the Boston bombing, Sandy Hook, Paris, etc., did not actually happen?
No, not at all. Oh, I'm assuming she does not happen as the government said they did.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, was it Gail, did you say was her name?
Yes, Gail.
Well, Gail, I would really invite you to just do some searching on the internet, and so any one of those events, just type cover up afterwards, and look to see if there isn't some solid evidence. Because on all these, for instance, the Sandy Hook thing, I really don't know. There's some really strange things about it, but not enough to convince me totally that it didn't happen and that there weren't real kids and all that sort of stuff. But you look at some of the crisis actors, as Dave was mentioning, and I have to say I don't know. Other things I can tell you, for instance, Hurricane Katrina, I've heard enough evidence, and particularly, I don't know if I have permission to share some of this stuff, but somebody who's a well-known researcher has told me stuff to convince me that it was manipulated and created. That hurricane was at least to some degree directed and created to go there and create the destruction it did. So some things, yes, I really don't buy the government story or the large part of it, and other things I really don't know. But I suggest anybody, you just have to be careful with your sources. And look, does it benefit the person who's sharing this information to give it? Like Alex Jones makes tons of money on telling people about conspiracy theories, so he benefits from that. But if CNN talks about a big conspiracy and they're saying stuff that's like doesn't benefit them, okay, I'm going to listen more carefully. And government documents in general are more reliable, although of course we know that there are fake ones as well. But, that whole question of what's real and what's not is a really important one. And remember that we all have these filters. And the more we can be aware of that, I think the better we can be at discerning kind of what's really going on beneath the surface.
So do you believe if I ask you certain events, would you be able to tell me point blank if they were manipulated or not?
I can tell you. What I like to do is use percentages, and I would say, like for 9/11, I'm 99.99% sure that the official story is far from the truth. So I can give you percentages.
I'll work with that. Okay, you just mentioned 9/11. Let's go with Sandy Hook.
As I say, Sandy Hook, I'm about 50-50 there. And you can talk about what aspects of Sandy Hook. I know that some things were covered up. But, you could explain it still away. So about 50-50 on Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook is a little strange because there were reports the school was originally closed. There was reports that there were no children in there, that it was an unsafe school. And how do you have this type of action happen? But on the flip side, there's a lot of grieving parents if it did happen.
Yes. So, there's too many things that don't make sense, and that's why I'm 50-50. I just not enough evidence to draw a serious conclusion.
One of my resident scientists here, Eric, he brought up a good point. He says Adam Lanza's death certificate was signed the day before the event. Have you ever looked into that?
I haven't, but, I worked as a nurse for many years, and sometimes you sign the wrong date. So there's explanations for these things, but yes, that could be, so there's all sorts of stuff that you have to just be careful about jumping to conclusions.
That one I'm still a little sensitive of because, like I said, even though there's a lot of, question marks above that, there's still the idea that this is children involved. And do you think the government would get children involved? Would they go that low for a false flag event?
I avoid saying the word the government. I say rogue elements in government, would they sacrifice children? Yes. And certainly it's, even the rogue elements, they don't just go around killing people. They only do it if there's a real reason. But they know that the deaths of children is something that tugs at the heartstrings of everyone. And so would certain people within these rogue elements be willing to sacrifice children for their own agenda? Yes.
Okay, what about the Boston bombing?
Boston bombing, I've seen enough evidence that I'd say I'm about 80-20 on that one, as far as 80% that it was manipulated.
Could it be something as simple that they know it's going to happen, so they set up the crisis actors to play it up a little bit more?
Possible, although with the timing and everything, unless they could be Manchurian candidates, which is a whole other question, so that they are somewhat controlled. It's possible, but not that likely, seems to me.
The Middle East. False flag event for oil?
More specific, like Syria is clearly manipulated all over the place. And it's not what you think it is. That I'm 100% certain of. As far as Saudi involvement in 9/11, there's a lot of evidence, and the whole Saudi Arabia is a key player and somehow seems to be involved with the elite.
What about something like
I'm almost certain of that.
What about something like the Montauk Project?
Well, there's lots of information on that. I'd say I'm about 80-20, and part of that, I have to say, comes from my sources. As you say, there's certain sources that convinced me I'm about 80-20 on Montauk is probably real.
Big Pharma, is that a false flag in your opinion?
Oh, no. Big Pharma, I think most people know that. If you just go to our health section and want to know the info, I'm 99.9% certain that there's huge manipulations going on Big Pharma. The head of the New England Journal of Medicine, Marcia Angelo, has come out and said that point blank that Big Pharma is manipulating things big time.
Okay, back to false flags. What about Paris?
There's some strange stuff around Paris. Enough strange stuff that I'd say I'm about 60-40 there. So 60% believing that, maybe even 70%, because there's just too much strange stuff around there. But as far as really solid evidence, I have to, 9/11, there is so much solid evidence. That's why I can go 99.99%. It's just undeniable if you just really look into it. But the evidence is there, but it's just not strong enough to give me up above 90%.
What about the nightclub shootings in Miami?
I really haven't looked into that seriously enough to give you an opinion on that.
The Fort Hood shooter?
This gets into the key thing of Manchurian candidates and mind control. So just in case some of your readers are not aware, listeners, Manchurian candidate is somebody who's had their personality fractured in a way that they have their personality that presents to the world is not even aware that they have all of these different alter personalities that can be triggered by commands to come out and do things that the regular personality is not even aware they do. And so these alter personalities can cause the core personality to do something and don't even realize it's being done there. So a lot of these shootings, the mass shootings, I'm fairly certain, I'd give it over 90% certain that at least 90% of these shootings like that are done by Manchurian candidates.
We are down to literally about 4 minutes left, and Vivian really wants to know what your opinion is of the information that Jordan Maxwell speaks of.
Jordan Maxwell is like a lot of researchers. I think he does some really good stuff. I think he has some really good intentions, and he makes enough sort of categorical statements and statements that are really out there without the solid evidence that I don't pay much attention to him. So I think I'm not saying don't go follow Jordan Maxwell. I'm saying I personally don't find that he uses enough reliable evidence to cause me to want to follow him.
That's straight up. I think our audience is really enjoying now. Straight up, you've kind of been. You're making them.
Well, yeah, I want to say straight up in that I don't go 100% anyways. Like, this is what's happening. I honestly don't know the truth. I think truth with a capital T in a way doesn't even exist. But I try to come up with relative truths and try my best to have what I call fluid intelligence, where I'm not jumping to conclusions. And that makes it more complex, but in a way more interesting too. And I enjoy the sort of the challenge of looking at what's going on and trying to figure it out.
We got time to squeeze in one more question, my friend, and this comes from Claudia. She's asking, do you believe aliens are currently working within the government?
Yes. I'd give that a 95%.
Is Valiant?
And that's based on information from inside sources.
Is Valiant Thor still around? That's what I want to know.
Valiant Thor?
Oh, he's the alien from the 50s and 60s that came from Venus. You got to read up on that.
Oh, I'm not familiar with him.
Absolutely. My friend, like I said, we got about 90 seconds left with you here. I want to say thank you so much, Fred, for coming on. I really want to do this again, man. I'm no BS. I want to do this again, and we can hit into the conspiracies hard and heavy. The problem is 2 hours goes by so damn fast.
It does go by quickly.
And
I want to thank you, Dave. I really love your questions. I love the listeners' questions. And if I can just leave one parting comment, open up to your own inner guidance, your higher guidance. If there's something you believe in, a higher force, ask that force to help you open in a way that serves you and serves all of us to understand what's really going on.
Absolutely. And take a few seconds here to tell people where they can find your information.
Best place for all this kind of stuff is wanttoknow.info, WANTTOKNOW.info. You'll find lots of great information there. Very reliable. It's become pretty popular, and I think you'll enjoy. You can choose any topic. We've got a search engine there, and just go and have fun.
Well, Fred, you continue on to do the great research that you're doing. I would say you're one of the strongest whistleblowers / conspiracy theorists that we have had on this show, because you're not... You're man enough to say, my friend, you're not 100%. And I can appreciate that. You hold on. I'm going to send this thing over to commercial. Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal and 19 and a half years in the United States Army is going to be my guest in hour number 3. We're going to continue to talk about conspiracies, aliens, and see where else it goes. You never know where it's going to go with the big bearded guy, so we're going to go right from there. Thank you for listening. Fred Burks, our guest, our first 2 hours. wanttoknow.info is the website. We'll be back right after this, Space Travelers.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines. Your answers are a click away.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend, I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit. And expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio. And on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild. Now we don't know who to pray to anymore.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the distance as we go into hour number 3. Tomorrow night on the show, we're going to head to Detroit, Michigan. Yes, Motown. We're going to get into the paranormal aspects of what's happening in the Motor City. Todd Bonner and his Detroit crew will join us tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. Hey, I do want to remind you that we got a lot of really cool stations on board here. We are on live on WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia. Thank you for making us part of your night just a week ago tonight. Thank you so much. We are also live on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans in over 160 countries around the world. We are live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio and live on Revolution Radio. Yes, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Apocryphal. Apocryphal is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, because that is your password for tonight. Apocryphal. Don't know what it means. Jeff, we're going to need a definition on that. Thank you so much. Hey, if we're all over social media, if you haven't checked us out, you can follow me on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to get a question or a comment to me. Literally, Twitterverse, you're right in front of me while I speak, so keep it up. You can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn, download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and Stitcher. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. And if you head on over to patreon.com, you can be one of our Spaced Out Radio patrons. Check it out today. We have some really cool swag to give you when you sign up with us. Patreon.com. Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal and S4 is with us. And his beard is as well. He packs a really good beard. Eric, how you doing, buddy?
No, I'm doing good. I'm getting over the snow.
Dude, I got 4 inches today. 4 inches of snow today. It's still snowing outside. Not here, man.
Yeah, it's gonna. It's going away. We had a foot.
I literally woke up to it snowing. It's still snowing. And I'll tell you, the best thing to get rid of snow, get a leaf blower. Easiest way to get rid of snow. Get a leaf blower.
Well, you know what my road looks like. My road's all gravel. And it's a long road for snow blowing.
Yes, it is. I understand that. Hey, I want to say thank you so much for joining us in hour number 3. The first 2 hours were Fred Burks, whistleblower. Used to work at the White House. Works now for wanttoknow.info if you want to check out his website. The one thing I loved about Fred, and I would have no problem bringing him back on this show, is as convinced as he is that there is a lot of dark room shenanigans going on in all stages of the government. He was still quite adamant that no one is 100% on anything that has happened. And it is all speculation because the sources who are in the know won't come out. And he also said that it is a responsibility of the public to do their own investigation as well, to be able to tell what is real and what isn't. How do you feel about that?
I like them. And I agree completely. Don't take 1 or 2 sources at their word. Go with 3 or 4. And if they all match up, then you might have a bit of truth. I don't even go by mainstream media. We don't even have cable TV. We just, having PTSD, just watching the news sets me off. Because the minute they start talking about war here and war there, no. No. because there's always an agenda with any war. There really is. And like I was saying in the chat room, you know, and I've told you on the show before, being in Iraq, we were in the moment. We saw the war as taking care of our comrades around us, and the Muslims were the enemy. Once you get out of that environment for a couple of years and you look at the whole big picture of what's going on now, it completely changes your perspective. So, yeah, no, and I liked him because he was honest. If he didn't know, if he didn't have 100% fact to back up his research, then he was willing to say 60% of it I see as maybe fact and 40% of it I can't verify. And that's honest reporting.
I thought he was very upfront and honest as well. You know, whether it was with the false flag events, whether it was crisis actors, whether it was, you know, looking into things that, you know, the mainstream refuses to look at, like Pizzagate. You know, he wasn't 100% on that, and I thought that added to his credibility, because we've had a lot of whistleblowers out there, and they're all over online. Well, that's a false flag, that's a false flag. We don't know. We don't know. And the minute people are pushing that button that is black or white, as Fred said, I think that is where it gets dangerous. And like Fred, to quote Fred, you got to stay in the gray, man. You got to stay in the gray. Like, you got to keep your wits about you and your skepticism high, because there is so much information, whether it's true or disinformation out there, that you got to have your BS meter cranked to its fullest in order to try and find some sort of truth.
Mm-hmm. And I think just the word false flag is used too much. Not everything is a false flag. Now, if you hear false flag, I would pull back on the spectrum and see what else is going on that they might try to be keeping your attention on. I think some of our current administration and what they're doing, if you look at the White House site and you look at actually the bills that are being signed into law, look at those. Those are black and white. There's no fabricating that. Yeah. Then you can see what he's doing. I don't believe anything on either side. I mean, you got one that's completely Republican, conservative. You got the other that's completely liberal, and you know they're both slandering the other, and they're both making fake news about the other. So what's really going on? Look at what's really being signed into law.
Eric, I consider you a pretty open-minded individual. I also have spoken very highly about you on this show, that you are a veteran of the United States Army, retired after 19 and a half years of service, which I know you hate this, but I'm going to say thank you from all of our listeners for doing that. And I know you would do it again in a heartbeat, because that's who you are. When you look at your military career, and I know you don't regret it for 1 second, and if you were needed, I know you'd be the first guy to jump back on the bandwagon to say, okay, let's rock and roll, let's go do this.
Mm-hmm.
But when you hear of all of these false flags and things that are happening behind the scenes that nobody expects their politicians, their government, or even a shadow government of some sort to do, does it make you feel that your service at times was irrelevant?
It does. Indeed. It makes me hate the government even more, because they're the ones that put us in that predicament. But at the same time, I did it for my soldiers. As a non-commissioned officer, a sergeant, I did it for my soldiers. That's why I did it, and I brought all of them home. So, yeah, I kind of walk a line on that, because, yeah, I do look, and I get asked by, the far I don't even know which side they're on, but I get asked, well, how can you call that a war? That wasn't a war, because what do? You didn't make America free. Well, you know what? That to me, that's irrelevant, because I served my country. I did what I had to do. I brought my kids home. And that's it in a nutshell. Were we there for the wrong reasons? Sure we were, but we answered the call of what we had to do. So that's where I stand on it. Now, as far as 9/11, I am a firm believer it was an inside job so we can go to Iraq. And so we can do the Patriot Act. And so we can snoop on, they're snooping more on American and domestic than they are foreign. And I just got done with domestic and international terrorism class, which I didn't learn anything really new. Now I'm taking criminal justice, which I like taking these courses because they're current. I mean, my textbooks are from 2017, so you can't get any more current than that. And so it's eye-opening, because I haven't been to school since 1987. I mean, high school, I graduated in 87. Went to the Army in 89. And so going back to school is rough, but I like learning. And taking a degree in Homeland Security, I'm actually learning more about how this government's operating and how it's supposed to operate versus how it's really operating. So it's good on that perspective. What was eye-opening was when we hit, and I've told this story on the show before, but when we got to Kuwait in 2004, and we had a whole battalion, and we did like 3 weeks of desert training. And it went beyond desert training. They actually taught us how to shoot from moving vehicles. They taught us how to shoot while we were walking. They taught us they actually had Delta Force and Special Forces that taught every unit that came into Kuwait that was going into Iraq. And they taught us counterterrorism, terrorism. We've had human trafficking courses. I mean, so depending on what your MOS or what your military occupational specialty, that's what MOS stands for, you all get the same training. Now, infantry, they are 11 Bravo. They have, specialized infantry door kickers, door kicking, that kind of thing. But it really doesn't matter what your job is. I had a buddy that was a truck mechanic just like me. And they pulled him in to a specialized unit to go kick in doors. They didn't train him anything different. And, I was a combat medic as well as a mechanic for my last 15 years. But I'm sidetracked here. When we got into Kuwait in 04, we did this specialized training. And intel came in that the insurgents were running wire across the highway to cut the gunner's head off as we were driving down the freeway. So we had to jump, and basically we welded T-posts or steel posts to our brush guards to cut the wire before it got to the gun. And then they were dropping grenades and explosives off overpasses. So we had to adapt to that by swerving in the middle of the overpass so we came out a different lane. These are things that they don't tell you. These are things that they don't tell you before you go into a war zone. They don't, so the administration that sent us there blind. And I remember seeing on the news, or I can't remember where I heard it. It was a news source while we were in Iraq. That there's Donald Rumsfeld and his entourage came to Doha, Kuwait, and they're talking to this reserve unit. And this reservist asked him, "Where's our up-armored trucks? Where's our body armor?" And this reservist was told, "Well, you got to deal with what you're given." Really? This is coming from our own government? They're going to send us into a war zone with what we're given. And what's really sad is during that first year that we were in there, we actually had family members that I knew from other units that they were sending their soldiers body armor that they were buying on eBay because the Army couldn't give them body armor. Are you serious? I mean, so you talk about conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory when it's proven. And I point it all back to Patriot Act, to, them doing things so that we can go to Iraq. Now, why were we in Iraq? Some say it was for oil wells. I don't know. I still don't know. I know there was no weapons of mass destruction, so the American public was lied on that one. But yeah, and getting to false flags. Not everything's a false flag. Look at what's going on behind the scenes, because you can look at other news sources to find out what's going on at the exact same time as what they call a false flag.
Question from Milo for you. He is asking, how do you stand the desert heat in combat gear?
I've got a picture of a thermometer that's pointed at 130 degrees. Now, to be honest with you, the body armor we wear is when I first went in, we had flak vests, and a flak vest you could shoot a 22 through. Then we had our web gear and our belts, and then they upgraded us to, how do you even describe it? Basically, our plates that are front and back are made of porcelain. They can withstand one shot. So if you get shot multiple times, you're just screwed. Then we had a groin, what would you even call it? It's kind of like a flap that covers your groin, and you had, neck protectors and whatnot. All in all, it's about an additional 40 to 50 pounds heavier than what you'd normally wear, and that's without without the ammunition, the magazines we had to carry. That doesn't even count your weapon. Depends on what kind of weapon you're carrying. Because, I mean, if you're a Mark 19 gunner, for example, that's an extra 70 pounds. And so anyway, it would, during the summer, it would be 130 degrees. You had another, 20 or 30 degrees to that. What we did was we got up early in the morning and we broke off at noon. And we lived in, I'm trying to think what the acronym stands for. It's a CHIVE. It's like a two-man trailer. And we had air conditioning. If the air conditioning went out, well, you're just screwed. And you drink bottled water. That's how you survive. To me, I drink coffee the whole time. I know for a fact coffee doesn't dehydrate you, because I drink coffee 24/7.
I know this for a fact. I've seen it. Dennis has a great question here in the chat room, and he is asking, should we keep some things classified? I bet Eric has an opinion on that one. Classification sometimes exists to protect. What's your theory on that?
I think if it's public, if it's going to affect public safety, because you don't want your enemy to know it, then classify it. I think if it's after the fact, it should be revealed. I mean, it's going to make a lot of people mad, but you know what? Transparency. But when it comes to classified stuff, yeah, if it affects public safety and health, and it's something that's going to affect public safety and health, if your enemy finds out about it, then yeah, that's when you classify it.
So do you think the public has a right to know?
If it's after the fact and it doesn't affect public safety, yeah. Now, getting to Eisenhower and the contract with the aliens and all that kind of stuff, the only reason they don't declassify that stuff is because, well, they don't really want to deal with the repercussions of exposing to the public that they sold us down the river.
Debbie
but
wants.
When it comes to
go ahead, Eric.
When it comes to a TR-3B, where you don't want the Russians to know about it, and I know the TR-3B is old news now, but whatever next generation of equipment comes out, you don't want the enemy to know about it.
Deb wants to know at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, do you feel Obama was very supportive to the military?
Yes and no, because I was an Obama supporter compared to what we're looking at now, and compared to what we're looking at before Obama. Yes and no. I think I don't. Everyone brings up the fact that he wouldn't salute the Marine when he came out of the airplane, or the Air Force One. And I remember he did piss me off pretty bad when he first took office, and he was talking about making soldiers pay for their own health care. So I remember that came out. And then, of course, he recanted, and nothing got changed. So to be honest with you, I think he did what he had to do. And I think the VA is a screwed up system. We all know that. It's not going to get any better under the current administration. But Obama, I really don't know. I mean, there's so many theories out there that fly around that, again, fake news. Who knows?
You talk to a lot of veterans, current veterans, older veterans, Vietnam veterans, and so forth. I'm curious what you think, or what you could tell us about the reaction to whether or not a lot of these veterans of today who went into these countries bravely waving the American flag and looking for freedom, wherever freedom may be, do they hold the same opinion as you, Eric, or do they feel that let down by the government? Or do they still rock that Stars and Stripes tradition that I serve my country and I'm proud of it, and I'm still buying into everything the government tells me?
I'm thinking, I think times change. I know I've been asked many times in the last year why I don't like Trump, whereas a lot of veterans and a lot of active duty were voting for Trump. And I've got a real simple answer for that. When you're in a unit and you're getting deployed over and over and over again. I mean, I was with my battalion 2 times in Iraq. They sent me to the Warrior Transition Battalion because my commander said, you've done your time. You're done. You're almost close to retirement. You're done. They were getting ready to go back for their 3rd tour. And while I was in the WTB, they came back and they went back for their 4th tour. That's way too much. And you walk around Fort Lewis, and this is back then, it's back in 2009, 2010. Now, if you have a patch on your right side, that's your combat patch. And it was disgusting to me to find senior ranking individuals that had never deployed before. And hearing stories from some of the other ones that, well, I didn't sign up to go to war, I'm not going. And they got out of it, one way or another. So now you've got the same units going over and over and over again. And when you're talking to those soldiers, yeah, they're going to vote for Trump because Trump's a businessman. He's not a politician. And when you vote for a politician, they're the ones that send you to war. Well, they don't look at the bigger picture. And most of the veterans, most of the military that I know now, yeah, they do see the same opinion. And that's what bonds us, is one, we're brothers and sisters in arms, and the other, we have the same view. And then, of course, you do have the other ones that they like to argue with me. But, we agree to disagree.
Do many of them believe that there are false flags happening, putting America and American soldiers at risk?
Well, a lot of them think those like us are just tinfoil hat wearing. They trust their government, and I feel for them. And you can't explain nothing different to them because they're brainwashed. And you're thinking the government would never harm anybody. And you find that, you know, back in, I think it was 04, 05, 06, I actually brought this up with my soldiers, and I was like, look, there's a lot of craziness going on in our country. And I want your opinion. If we were called in to a city in American soil, and we were told to fire on our own countrymen, would you? And we were pretty much all the same consensus, no. Unless they pull weapons. They pull weapons, that's a game changer. But if it's just they're throwing bricks and they're just, you know, mad because we're a symbol of the government, we can disarm them. We can, you know, pacify them, whatever. And is that the same today? I really couldn't tell you. I hope so. And then you got senior NCOs and officers that, oh, no, we would fire on them. Well, actually, no, that's an unlawful order, and you'll have to obey that unlawful order. So that's against the law.
Let's get to a question from Bob here in the Space Out Radio chat room, SOR Space Travelers. Bob is asking, Eric, if the feds have access to future technology, why are they not using it to obliterate their enemy, ISIS, Russia, North Korea, whoever it may be?
The feds. Well, the feds all work under Homeland Security. Homeland Security is an umbrella that the CIA, the feds, the DEA, I'm trying to remember, because I actually saw a chart on this in my schooling. The CJTF, which is a joint task force, they all work under Homeland Security. And Homeland Security is the Bush-created administration. And they're actually also the ones, I believe, that went against Trump's orders and refused to detain immigrants in the very beginning of it. But I don't think they're privy to some of the technology. They might be, you know, they might get snooping technology or, you know, spy gadgets, but as far as weaponry, I don't think they have weaponry. It stays with DARPA and the military.
Daryl is asking, Eric, do you have any colleagues who were affected by the Gulf War syndrome, and what are your thoughts on that?
Gulf War syndrome. I don't know any that are alive right now. I'll say that. I knew a couple, and I actually got called in for the Gulf War syndrome physical, and was told the scarring on my back was acne scarring, which I know is BS. But honestly, I'm really not sure what that was. It could have been depleted uranium very easily, because our Abrams tanks, if anything happened to the outer shell of the Abrams, a civilian crew of government would come in, put a tent over it, nobody could see what they're doing, and we'll patch it up. Because it's got depleted uranium underneath the shell. Now, we don't use M1s, to my knowledge. We use the Striker. The Striker is the main weapon that, the main rolling vehicle that we've got anymore. Some units might have the Bradley and the Abrams still. But most units, the Striker brigades especially, use solely Strikers.
For those of us who may not know what it is, myself included, what is Gulf War syndrome?
Gulf War syndrome was a mysterious illness. A lot of veterans were coming back from the Gulf War. And I'm trying to remember, the symptoms were so varied they couldn't really pinpoint it. So I think some of them had dizziness, some of them had rashes, some of them had they couldn't walk, and I don't know if they ever found out what caused it. My hunch is it's uranium because the whole country is full of it.
Leads to another question from Bob. What's with soldiers going overseas getting dozens of vaccination shots? Do they really need them, or is this some sort of experimentation on our troops?
I've always wondered about that myself, because I know I've had 5 anthrax shots. I've had what they call gamma globulin, which is a shot in the butt. It's like syrup. No one could really explain what that was. When I was in Somalia, we had to take mefloquine, which if you look up mefloquine, it was given to the CIA and recalled because it made the CIA field agents psychotic. And the dosage of mefloquine is once every 2 weeks, and we were taking it every week. We call it Manic Monday because, well, one, it gave you incredible abdominal pain. It erased your memory. I mean, for example, my ambulance driver would put his training shorts on his cot, on his bed. 2 minutes later, he's throwing stuff around, and I'm like, well, what's going on, bro? And, well, where's my shorts? Like, they're right there where you put them down. Oh, you look at them, you put them down. 2 minutes later, he's throwing his stuff around. Like, what? They're right there. Oh, I mean, that was Manic Monday. And they told us that was an anti-malarial. Now, was it, or was it experimental anti-malarial? And then when we got back from Somalia, they had us taking a pill called Primaquine, which was also supposed to be a post-anti-malarial. Are we being experimented on? I have no doubt. And I know it's funny, but the flu shot, we're mandatorily required to take the flu shot every year. And it went from a shot to a nasal inhalator. I'm not sure if the civilian, I refuse to take flu shots anymore. They made me do it for almost 20 years. I'm not doing it no more. I think the flu is, they don't know what it is. I think it's created. And so I refuse to take it. So I don't know if civilians have to take this nasal puff or not.
That's weird. There's so much that goes into it that us normal, everyday civilian citizens just wouldn't know about.
Oh, that doesn't even count the smallpox. I'd have a second smallpox shot. I mean, and there's other stuff. And back in the 80s when I first joined, they used an air gun. It was an air compressed, and some of our older, if there's any older listeners that were military, they'd remember the air gun. Basically, you don't flinch, or it'll rip through your skin, and it shoots the medication through your skin into your system. And they did away with that shortly after I've been in, because I realized that, well, when it's shooting this medication into your skin, you've got bodily fluids and blood that are coming out. And, well, with the HIV and hepatitis and things like that, everyone around could be susceptible to catching it. So they realized, oh, that's kind of unhygienic, so maybe we should stop doing that. But, yeah.
Amazing. So, do you think there would ever become a time, Eric, where people in the military, and I don't want to say a coup would happen like we've seen in more rogue countries, but do you ever see a time and a place where maybe in a more modern society that people in the military would finally say enough is enough?
one would hope, but you have to have a commander that's willing to step up, because a soldier's not going to go against a commander. Some will, but not enough. And by not enough, it'd be, if the 2 or 3 that said enough's enough, they would be arrested for being AWOL, and it'd take a whole unit. And that wouldn't happen. Because you're always going to have the 10 or 20 diehards. So it'd take a commander, because everyone's going to follow the commander. And I think commanders are so worried. I mean, coming from a pagan perspective, I've got an officer in the Army that wouldn't even mention his religion because he wouldn't make rank if they found out he was pagan. So if religion is an issue, do you really think there'd be a coup? I don't.
I don't see it happening either, but it is starting to question, because I think there are a lot more people opening up to what is real and what is not. But I mean, is it something, Eric, that they prey on the people who would like a free education, or prey on the men and women who maybe are trying to get out of a burden of society, maybe from the projects or from the trailer parks, or maybe a very under-affluent neighborhood? Do you think that's what they're preying on now?
Oh, yeah. And I think Fahrenheit 9/11 by Michael Moore is a perfect example of that. I mean, he showed Flint, Michigan, for example, one of the poorest countries, or one of the poorest cities in the country. And, yeah, and they tried to pick me up for recruitment. And I told them no. And I had to go for a psych eval and all kinds of stuff to be a recruiter. And I told them, look, my job is to bring kids home from war, not to get them into the military. And, of course, he didn't want to hear that. He's a shrink. He's supposed to get me into recruiting. And I'm glad I got out of it. I went back to Iraq instead of going to recruiting. And my colonel got yelled at because I wasn't in recruiting school, because the memo didn't get down to recruiting school that I wasn't going. But, I had the same buddy that got stuck door kicking, got stuck recruiting. Well, they destroyed his career because, come to find out, he has PTSD, like about 90% of the soldiers do that get deployed. And they ruined his career. They ruined I think he's just now getting VA. That's how bad they ruined his career, because he's got PTSD. Oh, my God, he can't be a recruiter. Well, maybe you should have identified that before you put him in recruiting school. And that's the kind of red tape and the kind of crap that we have to deal with. I think it would take a whole lot, and maybe in a couple of years, it all depends on what this administration does. I mean, they're ramping up the military for what? As far as hitting up the poor sides of the country? Hell yeah. That's obvious. And again, going back to Fahrenheit 9/11, Michael Moore actually approached all the congressmen that he could find on the streets and asked him how come their kids weren't in the military. And they refused to answer.
I could see that. I could see where that would get you fired up. So at what point? At what point then, knowing what if you knew now, back then, would you join?
Yep. Call me stupid, but yep.
Why?
It's in my blood. And if I could go make change, I would. If I could maybe be the instigator of the coup, I would. I mean, that might sound bad, but it's in my blood.
And I can understand that. I can totally understand that. Because you wouldn't know what you knew now if you didn't have the experience.
Now, let's hope what they're going to experience isn't Korea, or not Korea, well, Korea too, but China. Because if they go after China, well, the whole world's going to be rocked. I know China is beefing up the military by 7%. For what purpose?
I have no idea. And you know, it's funny, the older I get, the more I'm trying to figure out if any of these people in power fully understand that, you know, military action is not what your public wants anymore. It's like we're trying to grow by that, but there's these old cronies in there and the younger ones who are following right behind them who think that this is just one big giant game of Risk.
Well, speaking from an American standpoint, and we discuss this in my house occasionally, every time you have a Democrat in office, there is no war. You get a Republican in office, we go into war. Who do we have in office? Right down to Congress. And I'm not trying to drag politics into this, but that's the only reason Trump is still there.
But let me counter this for a second. President Barack Obama is the only president to ever go through an entire 2-term sitting and always being at war.
We were at war before he took office. He got the backlash of Bush's war.
True.
He's the one who brought us home. Now, on that though, he shouldn't have brought us home. Not when he did.
Okay.
One, with ISIS.
Exactly.
In my opinion, ISIS was created by us. You've got radicals, you've got extremists in every country. And what we did and what some of our soldiers did to those people during our occupation, and yes, I said occupation, we created our own enemy. That's where ISIS comes from. Is it government infiltration? I don't think so. I think it's just a whole lot of pissed off, reasonably so, Muslims. It's not about the Quran. It's not, because they don't even follow the Quran. They don't follow their own belief. But they see the Western civilization as the dictator of the country, of the world. And we went into their soil. What would we do if another country came in and occupied America and Canada? We would be fighting them tooth and nail with whatever weapon we could come up with, which in their case was IEDs, explosives in tin cans, explosives in the bodies of animals, explosives in garbage bags, mortar shells in parked cars. I mean, they used what they had. They weren't stupid. That was the complete example of asymmetrical warfare. And if we had a country that was occupying our continent, also Mexico in there too, we would be fighting tooth and nail. And I'm willing to bet we would have people in this country, in this continent, that would be creating cells and going to their nation. Would you agree?
I guess so. It does make sense. John brings up a good point here on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. He says a Republican got you out of Korea and a Republican got you out of Vietnam.
Well, who got us into Vietnam?
Johnson was a Democrat.
I don't even know. I'm not even looking it up. And you got to understand, too, back then, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but back then Democrats and Republicans were completely different animals. They were actually flip-flopped.
We got about 10 minutes left with you, my friend. That's been a quick hour.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing your stories. I appreciate that.
Anytime.
Let's get to some fun. You set up the Forest Moon Paracon. down in Concrete, Washington, which will be held September 23rd, and I'm glad to be speaking at your event for the second year in a row. How's things going with that so far?
Oh, things are going great. As a matter of fact, today we just got the word that we are now legally a state nonprofit. So the next step with that is to file our federal 501c3. And that's going to open up a lot of doors as far as stuff we can do with grants and that kind of thing, ideally. So we're locking in our venue. It's going to be, well, I'm not going to say where it's going to be just yet until it's officially locked in. But we'll just say that it's got some very interesting stuff in the venue that will go right along with what we're doing. And actually, yeah, it was interesting because I think last night was Bigfoot, wasn't it? No, it was the night before.
Yes, night before.
Night before. These weeks are flying by. So I got pictures and I posted them in the chat, but there were some Bigfoot tracks outside our venue from the last Paracon.
Yes, I saw those. Were those right on the property?
Yeah, oh yeah, those are right outside the lodge that we were at.
No kidding.
And then walking down the road. So for anyone that wants to come to Paracon this year, we are setting up VIP roundtable. Tickets are available for lock-in. If they want to come and vend, I have like 4 or 5 vendors that are already showing interest. So we're already ahead of the game from last year. And tables are $30 for those. And we are providing one table and 2 chairs. So our speaker lineup is, of course, yourself, talking media and the paranormal. And we have Christina George coming back. She's connecting the paranormal dots. Eric Markham's going to be there talking science and the paranormal. We have Tyler Allen standing there talking about the life of Bigfoot. I'll be hitting alien abduction, current, and history. We got S.J. and Russ Wells being a medium in the paranormal world. And we have Mike Moore coming, talking tools of paranormal investigation, and ethics of the paranormal. So that's our lineup for this year. And it's still going to be a one-day. If things go smooth, we'll look at a two-day event next year.
That sounds great. And, you know, I got to say this, my friend. You ran such a great Paracon last year that when we set up the Space Out Radio Caribou Paracon for this year, which you will be speaking at as well, I looked at a lot of the things that you did, and you gave us some great ideas. So if you're on the West Coast,
Good.
I mean, you have Eric Cooper's event, the Forest Moon Paracon, which will be held September 23rd. You have the Space Out Radio Paracon, which will be held the 29th, 30th, and October 1st. They're back-to-back weekends. The Paracon is in Concrete, Washington once again.
Get your passports now, folks, because we're just doing a tour. We're just going to do ours, and then we're just rolling up into Canada.
The paranormal is invading Canada by the masses, my friend. By the masses.
So the paranormal is invading everywhere.
Well, and that brings a good point. You know, Eric, I was talking to Ronald Murphy last night, the crypto guru. I'm not sure if you heard it or not, but one of the things that he stated was that he thinks that the way you guys are doing it and the way we're doing it by having almost like a multicultural type event with speakers from different backgrounds and different topics and different areas of research, that's the way to do it. Yet you see so many of these Paracons that are focused solely on ghosts, focused solely on Bigfoot, focused solely on UFOs. How much easier is it to try and put on an event when you have a little bit of something for the masses rather than just one specific topic hitting up, say, 5 to 10 different speakers?
Well, and that's the problem with today. Today, you ask anybody what paranormal, just walk up to a random person and ask them what paranormal means, and they'll say ghosts and hauntings. They don't even put the UFOs or the cryptozoology into it. And like I told you before, for me it was easy, because for me, I already had the various fields or the various areas of the paranormal. I already had people in the group that covered those areas. And then, of course, you stepped up and, oh, hell, yeah, Dave, you're talking, it was easy. Oh, and speaking of which, okay, so we've been having people asking, even in your chat room, about the videos from Paracon, and they should be uploaded by tomorrow or Saturday. I was talking to SJ today, and she's getting them uploaded to YouTube. That she'll share them with me, and I'll post them in probably Spaced Out Radio as well as Force Moon Paranormal, so they can be watched.
I'm up for that. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Exactly.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
Getting back to your question real quick, though, because I know we're running low on time, but to me, it should be a no-brainer, because paranormal covers, anything out of anything that's not normal. So it's kind of dull to have only ghosts or only UFOs, and they charge so much money. I mean, you're keeping yours low. But you go to a MUFON symposium, they want $200-300. You go to, even some of the local ones here, they want too much money. And their excuse is what's going back to the community. Yeah, but I don't know of too many people in this day and age that can afford that much money. So, and that was my issue. Because our group has always been multi-field, meaning Bigfoot, UFOs. I've been in the UFO and alien side for over 20 years, so that was my focus. And then the Pull and the Astral team, they focus on all the ghosts and hauntings, and then we're starting up the QRT team here, and as a case manager, I deal with the ghosts and the haunting side as well. And then we're taking a step further, and it was the idea of SJ, but we're actually going to start a meet and greet for all the tri-county groups of this area just to get a network going. And if that goes well, I might make it a state network so we can start getting a council going for Washington State at least. Just some ideas we're kicking around.
I think that'll be great, man. I think it'll be really good, because the more people we can get this information to, the better. And I have to look online, and I'm going to be looking online soon, but I believe we are the only true Paracon going on in British Columbia in 2017. I know there's other conferences going on. Every year there's the big Psychic Expo in Vancouver and everything. But I strongly believe we are the only Paracon actually happening in British Columbia in 2017. And to me, I think that's sad. I really do believe that that's a sad, sad thing, because there are some great researchers out there that need to be able to get the word out. There's a lot of people, thousands of people, way more than the researchers, who need to get their own answers to the questions they have. And Paracons are the great way to do that. And there needs to be more.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, in fact, it was exciting for me in that in putting out the word to these local groups, I actually found a group that hadn't really reached out and contacted us, but when I sent them the meet and greet email, they actually came back, and they are into UFO, alien, and Bigfoot, and they actually have their own techie that needs to talk to Markham, because he actually creates his own. He's working on a magnetic camera, a camera that picks up magnetic fields. He'd be a perfect one to talk to Markham about some of that stuff. So it was really refreshing and cool. We talked for about a good hour, me and the lead guy from that group.
On that note, my friend, thank you so much for coming in and dropping by in hour number 3. Appreciate you doing that.
Oh, anytime.
I know. It's fun, and I appreciate that. And you keep that beard growing. Don't ever think of trimming that beard. It's going to get a good tug when I get down there for Paracon.
Oh, I figured.
Absolutely. At least 20 to 30, minimum. Eric, you hold on. I got to wrap this thing up. If you're listening in on the Space Out Radio side, which includes WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, in New Orleans on 107.7 FM on the United Public Radio Network, and on Renegade Talk Radio, you are hearing Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking us out of the show. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Tomorrow night on the show, we bring in a great team of investigators from Detroit, Michigan. Todd Bonner and his crew, Detroit Paranormal, talking the ghosts of Motown tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Remember, if you want to hear this show and others, go to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. Of course, we are also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. Want to remind all of you, our website is spacedoutradio.com, and go to patreon.com. That's patreon.com to become a Space Out Radio patron there. We got some really cool swag we want to give away. And do us a favor, everyone. If you want to help us grow, help us get bigger, help us get better, tell a friend. We're going to win the night over one listener at a time, and it all starts with you. Mr. Bumblefoot, take us home.